Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Hey, what's happening, friends? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today we're going to be checking out the Phenyx Pro PTL-800 mixer. It's an 8-channel mixer with built-in effects, and in this video we're going to go over the mixer and I'm going to show you what some of the built-in effects sound like. Come on, let's get into this. In the house groove that we just listened to, I'm using 6 of the 8 channels of the PTL-800. I'm using channels 1 through 4 for the individual voice outputs of the Perkons drum machine, and then I'm also using channels 7 and 8 for the Roland TR-8S. So I've got an additional 2 channels that I could have used to add another synthesizer or groove box to this jam if I wanted to. I'm using individual channel EQs on the individual drum sounds coming out of the Perkons. I'm able to set those levels individually, and I'm able to route those channels individually to the internal effects from the PTL-800 as well. In the jam we just listened to, I'm using the chorus and reverb combination effects setting. If you're in the market for a new mixer, this is a great time to pick up one of these mixers from Phenyx Pro. They're offering 20% off from December 6th until December 25th. I'm going to put a link in the description to this video so you can check out that sale for yourself if you're interested. Be sure and stick around. I've got lots more examples of what the internal effects sound like in this mixer. Thanks for watching. Let's take a general overview of this mixer. This is an 8-channel mixer with 6 mono channels and 1 stereo channel. The mono channels have a mic input and a line input. We've got phantom power that we can turn on and off if our microphones require phantom power. And each of these mono channels also features a high Z input button. That's if we're using a balanced cables or unbalanced cables. If we're using unbalanced cables, we'll go ahead and turn those high Z buttons on. And if we're using balanced cables, then we'll turn those high Z inputs off. We have a gain adjustment for each of the channels. And we also have a low pass filter on each of the channels, which is an 18 decibels per octave filter, which cuts all of the frequencies, the super low and rumbly frequencies below 80 hertz. Each channel has a 3-band EQ that we can turn on and off and use that to adjust the highs, the mids, and the lows. Each channel can be set to pre-fader or post-fader settings. We also have an effects send per channel that we can turn on and off, and we can mute the channels and we can pan the channels as needed. We have some interesting routing options with this mixer as well. We have a bus output and we have 2 different auxiliary sends. We can use those for routing signals out to an external effects pedal, for example. We have 16 built-in effects, which sound really great, everything from reverbs and delays to special effects like detuning and pitch shifting. We even have some combo effects like delay and reverb. We can connect this up to an iPad or an iPhone or a computer pretty easily and send Bluetooth audio into the mixer. We can adjust the level on that Bluetooth audio. We have 2 headphone outputs with individual control over each headphone output. That's pretty convenient if you're working with a friend on headphones. And we've got our main outputs via XLR cable, and we also have an output to route to a sub speaker if you've got a sub speaker in your studio. Lastly, we have a USB audio connection on the back, and we can get that to route audio out of the mixer into something like a computer or into an iPhone or an iPad, or we can route audio from your computer into the mixer over USB audio, and we have a level over the audio signal coming in over the USB connection in the back as well. Now, using this with just the standard cables, I had 0 issues and everything worked really well and as expected. I did have a few anomalies, however, using the USB audio output. So if you're interested in using it over USB audio, definitely stick around to the end and check out my pros and cons section in this video about the mixer. In this setup, I wanted to have some pads that were absolutely drenched in both reverb and delay. So I'm using the delay effect that's built into the PTL-800, and I wanted to add just a ridiculously huge, wide stereo reverb to that as well, so that I could run the pads through both reverb and delay. So I'm using my favorite hardware reverb pedal, which is the Eventide Black Hole pedal. And this is a stereo reverb pedal that provides really lush and wide reverb soundscapes. But the built-in effects send and return on the mixer are both mono. So how did I get around that and route this stereo reverb pedal? I just used the auxiliary send 1 and 2, and I routed that into the pedal, and then I routed the stereo output of the pedal back into channels 7 and 8 on the mixer, which worked really well. To help further accentuate the stereo effect and the super wideness of the pads, I ran my bass sound, which is coming out of the Access Virus, in mono. So I've got drums and a vocal sample and like a crash cymbal coming out of the Poly End Tracker Plus. The Waldorf Blofeld is providing the pads. Let's take a listen to what this sounds like.
There's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us. There's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us.
In this setup, I'm only using 3 channels out of the PTL-800, so I still got plenty of channels remaining if I wanted to add another drum machine or another synthesizer to this setup. I've got a groove coming out of the Electron Digitact, and the Digitact is also MIDI sequencing the Poly End Medusa, which is a great fit for the PTL-800 and its built-in effects, because there are no built-in effects inside of the Medusa. So I'm using the reverb effect setting inside of the mixer to add a little bit of extra space and warmth to the sound coming out of the Medusa. I'm using the 3-band EQ on both the Digitact and also the Medusa to help sculpt the sounds that are coming out of both of these instruments. And I'm also using the 80 Hertz high-pass filter on the Medusa to help reduce any super low frequencies that may be present in this sound and help it fit a little bit better into the mix of this groove here. Let's take a listen to what this sounds like. Another feature about this mixer that I think is really useful and really convenient is that it's very easy to pair with Bluetooth audio coming into the mixer. So for example, if you like to watch YouTube videos on your iPad or your iPhone, but you'd like to run the audio from YouTube into the mixer, which is connected to your main monitor speakers, it's really easy to pair up with an iPad or an iPhone. The Bluetooth audio also comes out of either of the headphone outputs. So if you're, it's late night and you don't want to keep anybody awake, you can individually adjust the volume on either one of the headphone outputs as well. It was really easy to pair, and we've got a volume knob for how much the Bluetooth volume, the Bluetooth audio volume is coming in and out of the mixer as well. Just another really convenient feature of this mixer. In this setup, I wanted to experiment with some parallel compression on a groove that I've put together. I've got some drums coming out of the Poly-End Tracker Plus and some melodic elements coming out of the Digitact 2. Both of these are running in stereo into the PTL-800, and I've got all 4 channels running out of the bus output as well as being sent to the main output. I've got the bus output volume turned up, and the bus is being sent into the inputs of the Enjoy Electronics Godfather, which is adding some saturation and some compression. I'm taking the outputs of the Godfather and I'm routing that back into channels 7 and 8. So when I turn the fader up on channel 7 and 8, it adds the parallel compression to this groove, which seems to glue the bottom end together as well as providing a bit of a louder, thicker, and fuller mix overall. Let's take a listen to what this sounds like. In this setup, we're taking a listen to another one of the built-in effects, this time the phaser effect. I've got sort of a trip-hop groove set up here with some drums coming out of the Roland TR-8S and some chilled dub chords coming out of the Digitact 2. The Roland is going into the mixer clean except for some EQ adjustments, and the Digitact is running through the phaser effect from the PTL-800. Let's take a listen to what this sounds like. Previously, I explained how we can connect up an iPad or an iPhone to the mixer using Bluetooth audio and use that for watching YouTube or even listening to iTunes over our main monitor speakers or either one of the headphone outputs. I just wanted to expand on that a little tiny bit and explain that while it's great for watching YouTube videos through the Bluetooth audio or listening to music, it's not necessarily an ideal companion for wireless Bluetooth music creation. And why is that? Well, by default, Bluetooth audio creates a little bit of latency in the sound, which isn't really that big of a deal if we're just watching a video over YouTube, and certainly not a big deal if we're just listening to music over iTunes or Spotify or your favorite streaming platform. But when you're trying to create music in real time, we're often going to be playing an instrument, and the amount of latency that Bluetooth audio creates isn't really ideal for that. Let me show you what happens when I try to play Synthmaster 1 here over Bluetooth audio. Do you see that there's a little bit of a gap of time between when I hit the note and when we hear the audio back? That amount of latency latency is really not really conducive to creating music over Bluetooth audio. And that's not a fault of the mixer. That's just something that's inherent in Bluetooth audio. So I just wanted to make that clear so you're aware that creating music over the Bluetooth audio connection is really not ideal here. What you would want is you would want to connect your iPad or iPhone to an audio interface and then plug the cables out of your interface into one of the cabled inputs on the PTL-800 for a nice, clean, latency-free connection. Now I've got a really standard iPad music production setup here. I've got the iPad connected to an audio interface, and I've got cables running out of the interface into the mixer. I've got a super basic generative ambient pattern set up in the iPad, and we're running that through another one of the mixer's effects. This time we're using one of the combination effects, effect number 15, delay and reverb. Let's take a listen to what that sounds like. There's a good variety of effects built into this mixer. We've got a few different types of reverb and a few different types of echo and delay. We also have some combination effects that combine the delay and the reverb, or the chorus and the reverb. We've also got some modulation effects like chorus, flanger, and phaser. And lastly, we have a detune effect and a pitch shifter effect. If we want to select a different effect, all we need to do is just turn this knob here and select the effect number we want. And if we want to affect the depth of that effect, or for instance on the reverb, the length of the reverb tail, all we need to do is press the knob in, and then we can adjust the settings of that effect. Lastly, we can use this tap tempo button to get an echo or a delay to match our beats per minute a little bit better. All we need to do is just tap that in, and we can see this number changing depending on how fast I'm tapping that. And after a few seconds, it will register and keep the settings that you've tapped in. I've been working with this mixer for a few weeks now, so let's go over the pros and cons that I encountered while working with it for this review. We'll start with the pros. For the most part, I really like this mixer and I had a good time working with it. The things that I like the most about it is that it has good level per channel. You've got a good amount of gain per channel and a low noise floor. I didn't have any issues with noise coming out of the mixer. And I really like the quality of the built-in effects. I think these are perfectly usable and in some cases really great sounding effects. Now let's talk about the cons. The only negative things that I discovered while using this mixer all have to do with using the USB audio connection on the back. I use a Mac and I use Ableton as my main computer software. So when I used the USB audio to plug into my Mac and record audio into Ableton from the mixer, the first time I experienced some audio crackles in the recorded audio. So I raised the audio buffer size inside of Ableton from 128 samples, and I kept raising that buffer size inside of Ableton until I maxed it out at 2,048 samples. Now, that's not really a big deal, except if you're trying to monitor inside of Ableton while you're recording, because bringing the buffer size up to that high of a size creates some latency in the audio that you're hearing. And I'm used to working at a lower buffer setting like 128 samples. The next thing is that when you record audio from this mixer, you have to have the loop back turned on. Otherwise, no output is going out of the USB output in the back. And unfortunately, when you turn the loop back on, that's also bringing audio out into the mixer. And it's really easy to get a nasty feedback loop that way. I'm not exactly sure why it's created that way, but that is the way that it works. You can't turn the loop back off and still get audio out. And what that means is that you've got to have either your speakers turned down that are connected to Ableton and not be monitoring through Ableton, or you've got to set the output inside of Ableton to something other than this mixer. If inside of your audio software you have the input and the output set to both this device, you can easily get a really nasty feedback loop when you're trying to record audio. The next anomaly that I encountered is that when you're recording audio over the USB out, the right channel is ever so slightly lower in volume than the left channel. I tested this out on multiple different pieces of gear and finally ended up testing with just a mono piece of gear that is only running on one channel. When I'm recording audio out of the main outputs, I get a really smooth, even, and consistent level. But when I'm recording audio from the USB out, the right channel is approximately 2 decibels lower in volume than the left channel. Lastly, the only other thing that I encountered that was a little strange, and this one doesn't actually affect the use of the mixer at all, but if you're plugged in from the USB audio to a computer, the LED light turns on, even if the mixer is turned off. I just thought that was a little strange, but as long as you've got that audio USB out connected to a computer that is turned on, your LED is going to be on, even if the mixer is turned off. Again, that doesn't affect the performance of the mixer in any way. I just thought it was a little strange.